I had just moved into this old apartment complex when the middle-aged man downstairs called the cops on me. He claimed I was screaming songs at the top of my lungs in the middle of the night. When the tenant association showed up at my door, he was red-faced and shaking with rage. He pointed his finger at my face and started cursing. "You little brat, every night at 11 sharp you start howling. The whole building can't sleep because of you. I've recorded everything. Your voice sounds like a dying pig, you're going to give me a heart attack." The hallway was packed with neighbors who had been woken up. Someone kicked my door hard and called me low-class trash. Trash like her should be kicked out of the complex. She looks decent, but she's just a loudmouth hoodlum from the clubs. Under their hateful glares, I slowly pulled out my phone. I typed 2 lines and held it up. How exactly is a person born mute supposed to sing? The neighbor who had been kicking my door froze instantly. The man leading the charge, Jagger, kept his hand frozen in midair. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Everyone shifted their gaze to my phone screen. Mrs. Miller, the head of the tenant association, was a busybody who thought she had seen it all. She blinked, then narrowed her eyes. She looked annoyed, as if she thought I was playing a prank on her. "Listen girl, don't try to be clever with us. Just admit it. It's not just Jagger, I live in the opposite building and even I could hear you." Jagger suddenly exploded into a sharper, more frantic scream. "See, she's lying, she's just trying to dodge the blame. I even have evidence." He turned his phone volume to the max and clicked on an audio file. A sound like a ghost howling immediately filled the entire hallway. "Listen everyone, listen. That's her singing." Jagger pointed at me, his finger nearly poking my eye. "Every night at 11 right on time, my heart condition is acting up because of this." The shouting stirred the neighbors up again. Jagger is right, that sound is pure mental torture. My old man had a heart episode last night because of it. She gets to have her fun, but what about the sick and elderly? If someone dies from the stress, can she take responsibility? She's just a coward who won't admit her mistakes. Young people these days have zero accountability. One woman even aimed her phone camera directly at me. "I'm recording this, I'm going to post your face online and let everyone see what a piece of work you are." I looked at the mob, feeling a wave of exhaustion. Typing on a phone wasn't enough to explain this nightmare. I took a deep breath and typed another line, quickly shoving it in Mrs. Miller's face. "Give me 20 minutes, I'm calling my certified ASL interpreter, we can communicate properly." Mrs. Miller and the neighbors were stunned. An interpreter? They probably thought I was just stalling for time. Mrs. Miller looked at me suspiciously but finally nodded. "Fine, we'll give you 20 minutes. I want to see what kind of tricks you're trying to pull." 20 minutes later, a woman in a sharp professional suit pushed through the crowd. "Hello everyone, I'm Linda, the contracted sign language interpreter for Sylvia." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm and clear. It quieted the noisy hallway instantly. "I will be accurately relaying everything Sylvia has to say." Linda's presence brought a professional, undeniable weight to the scene. Mrs. Miller and Jagger exchanged a look. They clearly didn't expect me to actually bring someone. I began to use sign language to defend myself. Linda translated my gestures into words. "Sylvia says she has been nonverbal since birth. She has medical records from a top-tier hospital and is happy to cooperate with an official verification." I pulled out a yellowed medical certificate. When they saw the official seals and signatures from the state-certified hospital, the crowd went quiet. I had kept that paper in my bag ever since my last checkup. I never thought it would come in handy like this. Furthermore, in the recording Mr. Jagger played, the voice is raspy and processed. It clearly belongs to a middle-aged male. It does not match Sylvia's gender, age, or physical condition. Finally, she strongly doubts the authenticity of this recording. She reserves the right to seek professional forensic analysis and sue the person responsible for forgery. Every word hit like a hammer. The angry neighbors were now looking at each other confused. Jagger was the first to snap. He turned red with embarrassment and rage. "Bull, she's just hired an actress. Forensic analysis, who do you think you are? That hospital note was probably just printed 5 minutes ago. You're willing to fake legal documents just to lie, aren't you afraid of jail?" Mrs. Miller's face darkened again. "Sylvia, don't think bringing a helper will let you flip the truth." She stepped forward, looking at me aggressively. "You keep saying it's not you and you don't have the equipment. Fine, do you dare to open your door and let us see for ourselves? If you're innocent, we'll apologize in front of everyone. But if we find evidence..." The crowd erupted again at her words. "Yeah, open the door, let us in. If you won't open it, it means you're guilty." All their eyes were like sharp blades cutting into me. They didn't want the truth, they just wanted an excuse to trample on my dignity. My front door was pushed open and the mob swarmed in. The cozy home I had spent so much time decorating was instantly invaded by strangers. Mrs. Miller acted like a general, waving her hand. "Everyone help me look, see if there are any microphones, speakers, or recording gear." Jagger led the way, charging straight into my bedroom, which also served as my studio. The neighbors weren't polite. They tore through my closets and threw open my drawers. Their faces were filled with excitement and disgust, as if they were on a holy mission. I stood in the middle of the living room like a prisoner on display. I felt cold all over. However, 10 minutes passed and they had turned the place upside down. They didn't find a single microphone, let alone professional sound cards or speakers. The crowd started to murmur, some looked bored or annoyed. Just then Jagger, who was still digging through my desk, let out a loud shout. "I found it. Everyone come look, here's the evidence." Everyone rushed toward his voice. My heart skipped a beat as I looked toward the studio. Jagger was sitting at my computer pointing at the screen. Through the gap in the crowd I saw it. He had quickly pulled a black USB drive from his pocket while my computer was still on. He plugged it into the tower. His movement was sneaky, but it didn't escape my eyes. So that was his game. My heart sank to the bottom of my chest. "Listen to this." Jagger turned my speakers to full volume and clicked a file. "This is it. This is the sound we hear every night." That ghost-like howling filled the room again. On the desktop, the icon for that audio file was glaringly obvious. The neighbors exploded. Any doubt they had left vanished instantly. God, the evidence was right on the computer. I knew it. Why would Jagger lie about something like this? Turns out she didn't need equipment. She just recorded it on her PC. Young people these days. A wave of insults and disgust crashed over me once more. Linda, standing next to me, turned pale. She tried to defend me. "Please everyone, stay calm. We don't know where this file came from. It could have been." But her voice was swallowed by the roar of the mob. "You're in on it with her, aren't you? Stop lying. We don't want scammers like you in our neighborhood." One older woman even shoved Linda hard. "Get out, you have no say here." Linda was just a professional woman. She was no match for this angry mob. She was shoved and pushed out the door looking completely frazzled. Now I was truly alone. Mrs. Miller saw this and gave a smug smile. She walked up to me with a fake look of concern. "Look girl, take my advice, the evidence is right here, there's no point in lying anymore. Everyone makes mistakes when they're young. If you're willing to change, we're willing to give you a chance." She pulled a pre-printed paper and a pen from her pocket and put them on my coffee table. "Here, sign this confession. Promise you won't disturb the peace at night anymore. We'll just sign it and follow the procedure, then this can all be over. It's better for everyone." I actually laughed. They had come prepared. I slowly lifted my head and met Mrs. Miller's confident gaze. Then I firmly signed the word no in the air. I reached out and grabbed the pen and the paper. Using every ounce of my strength, I tore that confession into tiny pieces. The pieces of paper fell to the floor like snow. The room erupted. "She destroyed it." Someone shouted. "She destroyed the confession, call the police. She's obstructing, she's dangerous." I stood perfectly still in the middle of my torn-apart apartment and let them shout. I'd spent my whole life letting noise break around me. This was no different. Then I opened my laptop. I turned it to face the room. Typed one sentence. Turned the screen toward them. "You should have unplugged the USB first." The shouting stopped. Not gradually. All at once. Like a power cut. Jagger's face, which had been flushed with victory 30 seconds ago, changed color in real time. Mrs. Miller blinked. Her mouth was still open, shaped around a word that didn't come out. I pressed play. My laptop had been recording since the moment they stormed through my door. I work from home. I take client calls and remote conferences through my computer. 3 months ago, after a package theft in the building, I installed webcam security software that ran silently in the background, triggered by motion, always saving to cloud. The footage was timestamp clear. It showed Jagger at my desk. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. He glanced over his shoulder, once, checking the doorway. The room had been focused on the search. Nobody watching him. He pulled the USB from his jacket pocket. A deliberate movement, not accidental, not confused. He inserted it into my computer tower. Dragged the file to the desktop. Then straightened up, looked at the screen, nodded slightly to himself, and turned around. 5 seconds later he shouted, "I found it." The video played in full in front of everyone. No one made a sound. Not Jagger. Not Mrs. Miller. Not the neighbor who'd been recording to post online, who was still holding up her phone, now pointed at the laptop screen, still recording, having just documented everything. I waited until the footage ended. Then I typed again and turned the screen. That is the first honest silence I've heard tonight. Linda appeared at the door. She'd been outside, frazzled and shoved and furious in the controlled way that professionals who care about their clients get furious. She saw me. Then she saw the laptop screen. Then she saw Jagger's face. She took out her phone and made 2 calls. The first was to the police. The second was to a lawyer she had saved in her contacts for situations she hoped she'd never need. Jagger snapped first. She edited that, he said. His voice had gone high and strange. She's framing me. You can edit footage now. This is AI. She has been at her desk in front of this laptop for the past hour, Linda said, having stepped back inside. In front of witnesses. Your witnesses. She looked around the room at each face. The timestamp is verified. The cloud backup exists. I watched her turn the screen around without touching the keyboard first. She's not really mute. Jagger pointed at me. The pointing hand was shaking now. She's been faking this whole time. She's an actress. She hired that, he gestured at Linda, to help her run some kind of scheme. A scheme, Linda repeated. Her voice was flat and professional and somehow more devastating for it. To do what? Stay in her own home? Mrs. Miller had been standing very quietly for someone who had been shouting commands 5 minutes ago. She moved toward the laptop. I put my hand over the keyboard. Typed, touch it and I add destruction of evidence. Linda translated. Mrs. Miller stopped. The police arrived 14 minutes later. 2 officers, one older and one young. Mrs. Miller intercepted them at the door with the practiced energy of someone used to controlling narratives. Officers, thank God. We've been dealing with a serious noise disturbance for weeks, and tonight when we came to address it, this woman became aggressive. She tore a document, said a neighbor, helpfully. There's footage, someone else started. Linda stepped forward. Officers, my name is Linda Chen. I'm a state-certified ASL interpreter retained by the resident of this apartment, Sylvia, who is nonverbal from birth. Tonight, a group of approximately 12 residents entered this apartment without consent, conducted an unauthorized search, destroyed property, shoved me physically out of the building, attempted to coerce Sylvia into signing a false confession. And one resident, that man, she indicated Jagger clearly, planted fabricated evidence on her computer. All of this was captured on her security system. The older officer looked at Linda. Then at Jagger. Then at the room, the ransacked drawers, the overturned items, the torn paper on the floor. Ma'am, he said to Linda, is your client able to communicate with us directly? Linda looked at me. I nodded. She said, yes. She uses sign language, which I will interpret, or she can write. I held up my phone. I had been typing since the officers walked in. I turned it toward them. My name is Sylvia. I was born nonverbal. I have medical documentation confirming this. Tonight, these individuals entered my apartment without my consent, searched my belongings, planted an audio file on my computer, assaulted my interpreter, and attempted to force me to sign a confession for a sound I am physically incapable of making. I have webcam footage of the USB being planted. It has been backed up to cloud storage. I can give you the access link now. The older officer read it twice. You have footage, he said. I turned the laptop toward him and pressed play. Jagger's phone was seized within the next 20 minutes. The USB was bagged as evidence. Mrs. Miller's pre-printed confession, the extra copies she had in her bag, which the younger officer found when she was asked to empty her pockets for an inventory of what had been brought into the apartment, was documented and photographed. 3 neighbors who had physically participated in the search gave statements that, when compared, contradicted each other at several key points. The neighbor who had been recording to post online, the one who'd held her phone up the entire time, had recorded everything without realizing that everything now included the footage of herself shouting, the footage of Jagger planting the USB, and the footage of Mrs. Miller pressing a pen into the hands of a nonverbal woman and telling her to sign. When the officers told her they'd need a copy of her recording, she looked like she was going to be sick. The forensic analysis took 11 days. It confirmed the audio file on the USB had been digitally altered, pitch-shifted, layered, and edited from a raw source recording. The raw source was a middle-aged male voice, filtered and processed to create the ghost singing effect the building had been hearing for 3 weeks. The metadata on the file traced the original recording date and the editing software back to a device registered to Jagger's home network. There was more. An inspector found a small Bluetooth speaker in the ventilation shaft between Jagger's apartment and the unit above his. The speaker had been there long enough to collect significant dust on the sides that weren't facing the vent. It had been connecting to a device in Jagger's apartment and broadcasting through the building's old pipe system. Sound traveling upward and outward through the ventilation, impossible to pinpoint to any specific source, easy to hear as emanating from everywhere and nowhere. Specifically from above. Specifically from Sylvia's floor. The motive, when it surfaced, was infuriatingly mundane. Jagger's nephew had been on the apartment's waiting list for 2 years. Sylvia's unit, renovated by the previous tenant, which was why it looked different from the others, was the specific unit the nephew wanted. Jagger had tried the formal complaint route first. The building manager had ignored him. So he'd constructed the noise complaint, built the reputation, cultivated the mob, and chosen Sylvia because she was new, quiet, and he'd assumed, mute. easy to bully, unable to speak in her own defense. He'd been wrong about the second part. The neighbor's video went online before anyone could stop it. She'd been planning to post it as evidence of Sylvia's guilt, a triumphant public shaming of the disruptive new tenant. Instead, it was 23 minutes of footage that began with a mob of neighbors screaming at a woman holding up a phone that said how exactly is a person born mute supposed to sing? And ended with a man planting evidence on a disabled woman's computer while the same mob cheered. The captions that ran across the reposted versions varied, but the most shared one read, "They accused a mute woman of singing. She never said a word. She didn't have to." By the end of the first week, the video had been viewed 11 million times. The comments section was a disaster for everyone except Sylvia. The way she just stood there while they destroyed her apartment. The way she stayed calm. I would have lost my mind. He specifically chose her because she was mute. He thought she couldn't fight back. She had a webcam running the whole time. You should have unplugged the USB first. I'm going to think about this sentence for the rest of my life. Disability rights organizations issued statements. 2 news outlets ran investigative pieces. A national disability advocacy group offered pro bono legal support within 48 hours. Linda called Sylvia that evening. Sylvia was sitting on her couch in the middle of the ransacked apartment, reading the offers of support one by one. She looked at her phone screen for a long time. Then she typed back, "Tell them yes." The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later. Defamation, harassment, disability discrimination, unlawful entry, emotional distress, property damage, evidence tampering, coercion, assault, for the shove that pushed Linda into the hallway. Jagger was named as the primary defendant. Mrs. Miller was named as a secondary defendant for organizing and leading the unlawful entry, for the attempted coercion, and for failing to exercise any duty of care despite being informed of Sylvia's disability. 6 additional neighbors were named for their participation in the search and their recorded conduct. The tenant association's legal structure was examined and found to have operated significantly outside its charter authority. The building owner, when served with the lawsuit's opening documentation, terminated the association immediately and issued a statement expressing deep concern about the events. He also, significantly, hired a property management firm to handle the building going forward. The mediation session happened before the full trial. Jagger's lawyer had advised him to settle. The evidence was too complete. The footage was too clear. The metadata trail was too specific. The Bluetooth speaker in the ventilation shaft had his fingerprints on it. Sylvia requested the right to give a written statement before any settlement was discussed. The mediator agreed. Linda read it aloud. The room, lawyers, defendants, the mediator, the representatives from the tenant association, was quiet throughout. But it went quiet in a different way when Linda reached the 3rd paragraph. "I have never spoken a word. Not one. This is not something I chose. It is simply who I am. My silence has always made people comfortable with assumptions." She assumed I was hiding guilt. He assumed I was easy to destroy. That night, they invaded my home and treated my silence like an admission. They tried to force a confession from someone who cannot produce the noise they accused me of making. They searched my belongings. They pushed the person who speaks for me out the door so I would be truly alone. The most painful part was not the accusation. It was how eagerly they believed it. How quickly a room full of people decided that a woman who could not shout back must be lying. You did not hear me because I could not speak. You refused to hear me because you did not want to. Silence is not guilt. Disability is not dishonesty. A mob is not justice. I am asking this court to ensure that the next person they decide to silence has the record to prove what silence actually costs. The mediator took a long moment before speaking. Jagger's lawyer leaned over to him and said something in a low voice. Jagger said nothing. His face, for the first time since Sylvia had known him as the red-faced man pounding on her door, was entirely still. The settlement was substantial. Jagger paid. Mrs. Miller paid a smaller amount that still represented a significant consequence. The 6 named neighbors paid individual amounts calibrated to their documented participation. The tenant association was formally dissolved. The building was required to install updated security cameras in all common areas, implement a proper disability accommodation policy, and complete staff training on disability rights law. Anti-discrimination training was mandated for any tenants who wished to participate in any future building governance structure. The nephew never got the apartment. Some neighbors came to Sylvia before she moved out. She had not decided to leave because she was driven out. She had decided to leave because she had won, and winning meant she got to choose where she spent her life. A woman from the 2nd floor knocked. She'd been at the edges of the mob, had shouted something Sylvia hadn't clearly seen. She stood in the doorway with both hands clasped in front of her. "I'm sorry," she said. Everyone was so certain, and Jagger seemed so sure, And I didn't think Sylvia had a small whiteboard now. She preferred it for certain conversations. She wrote, "You did not need to know me to know that breaking into my home was wrong." The woman looked at it. "I know," she said quietly. "I know that." Sylvia erased the board. Wrote one more thing, "I believe you. It doesn't undo it. But I believe you." She turned back to her packing. Other apologies came. She received them all with the same calibrated honesty. She did not pretend things were erased. She did not perform forgiveness she didn't feel. She acknowledged what was genuine and let the rest sit where it belonged. Jagger never came. She didn't expect him to. The new apartment was on the 4th floor of a building near a small park. The light was good. The walls were thicker than the old place. The neighbor across the hall was a retired teacher who, on the 3rd day, knocked and handed Sylvia a note. "I know some basic sign language. My daughter is deaf. Let me know if you ever want to talk." Sylvia stood in the doorway and read the note twice. Then she signed, "Thank you." The neighbor's face lit up. She signed back, a little rusty but recognizable, "Welcome to the building." A child from the unit below left a small whiteboard outside Sylvia's door with a sticky note, "In case you need it." "I have 10 more." Sylvia kept it on her desk. The building was not perfect. No building was. But it was quiet in the right way, not the loaded silence of people refusing to speak to her, but the ordinary quiet of people going about their lives without anyone treating her presence as a problem to be solved. On a Tuesday night in November, Linda texted. "Final payment processed. All settlements confirmed. The association dissolution is legally complete." Sylvia was sitting by the window. It was 11 p.m. No howling from the vents. No pounding on the floor. No mob gathering in a hallway. Just the park below, just the streetlights, just the city making its ordinary nighttime sounds. She looked at Linda's message for a moment. Then she typed back, "Thank you. For all of it. For that night and everything after." Linda sent back, "You did the work. I just spoke." Sylvia set her phone down. She looked out the window at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, and for the first time in months, 11 p.m. was just 11 p.m., not a countdown, not a threat, not the beginning of something terrible. Just the middle of a quiet night. She thought about the confession paper in pieces on the floor. About Mrs. Miller's face when the laptop screen turned around. About Jagger's shaking hand as he pointed at her. About how completely certain all of them had been, how effortlessly they'd decided she was lying, how they'd assumed that a woman who couldn't speak couldn't also think and plan and record and wait. She thought about the mediator's courtroom. The silence after Linda finished reading. The specific quality of silence that happens when a room full of people understand, at once, that they had been wrong about something that mattered. She had spent her whole life learning how to live in noise she couldn't make. It turned out she hadn't needed to make any. They tried to silence someone who had never spoken a word in her life. She hadn't needed a voice. The truth had been louder than all of them.